Good day, and welcome to episode 37 of the Aaron Wayne podcast. Quick note on this one, guys. My buddy Ryan and I sat down. He and I are both teachers, and it was the end of a work day. And listening back to this podcast, I realized how faded my brain was. Ryan did great, but I was a little lackluster posting it anyway because we talk about some good stuff in here. And, you know, we're still growing. We're still grooving. We're still getting better at this. So note to self, don't schedule a podcast for 5 o'clock at the end of a work day. Here we go. So Ryan is a civics teacher at my school. Really good guy, does a lot of work with the kids. He's a mentor, he's a coach. He is this teacher of the year for the last school year. And as you guys know, last year was a wild school year. So shouts out to him for that. Great guy, does a lot of work in the community, extremely involved and highly motivated to make an impact with kids. So this is the conversation that we had together. And like I said in the show note, we're going to run it back because I need another run at this as the host of the podcast. He did great, but I think I need another shot at it. But this is what we got, and this is Ryan. So I've been doing the podcast for a while, and I've been mostly doing it independently, just like free association, just thoughts, talking, you know, yoga, education, all these different things. And I've been interviewing more people recently, and I was like, who's in my life that I would be interested in interview? And I thought of you. You were one of the first people that I thought of because you like roll through my classroom, I don't know, like 3 times, 4 times a semester or a quarter, and we just have these like awesome conversations. Yeah. So I'm just always interested, like seeing where a conversation goes. Yeah. So I'm really curious because like, and I'll do like a proper introduction and I'll, you know, like before for, you know, the podcast post, like who this guy is and what he's up to. Yeah. But I'm just curious because you're a teacher, I'm a teacher. Like how did you come into the idea that you wanted to be a teacher?
I think it's kind of ingrained in me. Mm-hmm. My mom was always like the head of a daycare growing up.
Oh, so she was always like working with kids.
Yeah. So like locally, we had Fun Challenge. People from this area would know back in the day. That's a long time ago. Yeah. long time ago. That's long and gone. But my mom kind of helped run those daycares. And through that, I kind of saw the impact my mom made, not only to kids while they were at that daycare, but like we'd be at the store and people like, hey, it's Miss Tracy. Hey, it's Miss Bud. Yeah. And I'm just like, man, that's amazing.
It's like having an impact.
Yeah. So it's just impacting people beyond like a work environment, like you're impacting their life.
So when were you conscious of that though? Like that this is, so was it like teen years? So like my wife was she was destined to be a teacher forever, right? Like she knew she was going to high school, college, like she knew she was a teacher and she was perfect fit for it. But for me, I was, you know, I graduated from college with an English degree. I thought I was going to be F. Scott Fitzgerald, you know what I mean? And then, you know, I just kind of messed around in the business world for a while, and I was like, this is vapid. This is I don't feel like I'm contributing. Yeah. I have a skill set. And then I got into education. It worked to be a perfect fit for me. But did you like know in high school, college? Like,
I think
did you know?
7th grade really changed a lot for me. Mm-hmm. I had a teacher that I'm really into sports. Like I'm wearing an Atlanta Braves hat right now.
Yeah. And you coach?
Yeah, I coach.
Yeah. Before the podcast started, we were just like talking about athletes from my high school and stuff.
Yeah. So I had a teacher really connect school in that way. He was like the only male teacher, or it was my second male teacher ever. And he was really connecting school that way. And I was like, man, this might be something I want to do later. And then when I got to high school, I actually was very fortunate. I was in a preschool program, and I was the only dude in there, and I saw what that meant for those kids.
So wait, run that back. So you were helping to like run. You were part of like the staff of a preschool program.
So no, actually at Christiansburg, or at my high school.
Yeah,
okay?
yeah.
At my high school, we had the ability to sign up for early childhood education.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And then also at our time during school, I feel like and still right now, there's a big push kind of to get those dual enrollment credits.
Yeah, like the high school that our school feeds into is like really good about that.
No, yeah. So, and we have a community college right beside us. So that was an option later for me. If I started this course when I was my freshman year, by my junior year, I could become like a teacher in that program and get college courses.
Oh, right on.
Get college credit, not college courses, but I'm like taking a college course about early childhood
like
education.
getting ahead on that, yeah.
And then just there in that class from 9th grade, it all started coming together.
And so, like, you're probably one of the only dudes in there, though, right?
Yeah, I was the only. Actually,
like on the wrestling team, athlete,
Yeah. There was a baseball player in there. Shout out to my man back.
Yeah.
he was awesome, man. We had a good old time. We always sat beside each other, but then like the kids loved us. We were rock stars, man.
Yeah.
So
you get to be fun dad. My wife has she had someone that she worked with a long time ago at in a different school district, and like she's like very clear on the expectations and gets a lot out of her kids, and she's just a phenomenal teacher. And she had this co-teacher who was just like a really fun guy, and he would come in and like be like, "Hey guys," like he would like come in and like completely sidetrack her lessons and stuff. And so it's like there's this fun dad aspect is what we started calling that, of like sometimes
I like that
because you're like well, I mean, men are in most structures of power, men are disproportionately like in those positions. But when it comes to teaching, it's like there are so few. I think we have a pretty decent ratio.
Yeah, here at this school, I think
our
they're very
school, but
blatant about that, like trying to make sure it's not that big of a gap.
Yeah. And it's interesting because there are certain things that I talk to male colleagues about, and they just have a different experience with the kids because the kids so seldom have like a cool, confident, especially young teacher. That was one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you, and I'm going to talk to a teacher that used to teach her as well later in another episode. But I just think it's interesting to talk about what education is, like where it's going. And so so you went through this high school program and so you got those credits and you're like, let me dive deeper.
Yeah, and that was such a cool experience. Like I got chill bumps talking about it, man.
Yeah.
Like it was amazing.
Kids are super into it.
Yeah, I was lesson planning. I had my own desk. I, created things.
Man, I didn't make a lesson plan until I was like 27.
So I had really good experience, and I mean they were basic lesson plans. I was making lesson plans for 3 and 4 year olds, but I mean it really helped me kind of understand a whole kid. It's more than just like we're going to do this activity. You have to really plan things out in this lesson plan, and that really showed me when you had to do it in front of 3 and 4 year olds, because if not, they'll just go,
they're done.
Crazy.
Yeah, they're done, man.
Yeah. So then from there, if I'm going to be honest, I honestly thought I wanted to be a high school teacher.
I did too.
Like, I really think that's the sports. Like, I saw a lot of my role models in school were like my coaches and things like that. A lot of them were teachers too. So I think that but that was like in high school. So I think that played a big part in that because, I had coaches that were like amazing teachers as well. So I feel like that.
And in the high school years, you're coming a bit more online intellectually, so you can actually engage. Like when you're, at least my experience from the ages of like 11 to 14, everything was just chaos. You know what I mean? My brain was chaos. My life was chaos. My teachers, I was behaving chaotically. You know what I mean? Yeah. And then in high school, you kind of come online a little bit. I wanted to be a high school teacher too, but then now that I found myself in middle school, I realized how crucial it is to have good middle school teachers.
No, yeah, and that all started so then I went and wrestled, but I got hurt, so then I stopped wrestling, and that actually was a blessing in disguise because the school I was at, it wasn't as good for crafting teachers, if I say, as Bradford. So I think it all worked out in the long run. I think things.
So wait, what college did you go to?
I went to Limestone College down in South Carolina.
Oh.
So if you ever seen House of Cards, that's where Frank Underwood's from.
Yo, dude, I love House of Cards.
Yeah,
I love House of Cards.
So,
I really was into that
the
show.
Giant Peach, that's in Gaffney, South Carolina. That's where I went to. Yeah, I lived there for a year. So.
Had you been to? I mean, I'm maybe on vacations and stuff, but had you been to South Carolina for a long time before that?
I mean, only to like Myrtle Beach.
Yeah,
we went there for
which isn't really
South
Carolina. Yeah, me too.
Yeah, it's more like
South Carolina is an interesting place, man. I was in I was a camp counselor. So my path to becoming a teacher was I was in the corporate world doing all that. Yeah. I was like, I like working with kids. Let me try this. So I became a camp counselor for a month in a place called Mountain Rest, South Carolina. Okay. Super rural, and it's in the Highlands. And it was what
is the closest city?
I think the closest city I'd have to look it up, man. It was like 10 years ago. I don't know, but it was a Christian camp, and I sort of like told them I was Christian, even though it's like not necessary. You know what I mean?
I know what you mean. Yeah.
But it was a really beautiful experience, and it like tuned me into, I like got to work with all different ages of kids, you know what I mean? And so, you know, one week rather, I'd be managing a bunk of, you know, high school freshmen and sophomores, and then another would be 6-year-olds, which are first graders. So like I had this big range, you know what I mean? But I think those sort of things are important. It's just kind of like you with your daycare, or the your mom setting the example with the daycare, and then seeing like the high school classes of early childhood ed. It just gives you a chance to see, like, is this a fit for me? You know what I mean?
Yeah. And then something that really trained me, because you were talking about, is this really a fit for me? So then when I came back to Radford University, I love history, you know. Going back at that 7th grade history, or that 7th grade teacher I was talking about, he was a history teacher. So you know, he really lit that spark for me. So ever since then, I've really been tuned into that. But I then worked at a daycare center that my mom was, you know, running.
Oh, you worked for your mom?
Yeah.
That's fun.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah. So I was doing that, and I was the red room teacher in the afternoon, so I had to get him up from nap. Man.
Yeah,
that's all I gotta say.
Rousing a bunch of kids.
Yes, you gotta, you know, some of them were still like, most of them should have been potty trained, but maybe not all of them. So that was another factor, kind of get me ready for later in life, you know. And then like I had some kids that like, I mean, all these kids are coming from different walks of life, you know. So some kids at their house, they're doing whatever they want. That would play out in the classroom. Yeah. Like I would say, you can't sit there. You would just take his chair, get it up, and move. You know. So I had to learn classroom management while doing with 3-year-olds. I can recall one time I was sprinting, like, because the bathroom is connected to the bathroom's connected to our classroom. I was like running in and out like in circles, trying to chase this kid. He was in his underwear running from me. I will never forget that, man. Because like when things get hard, I'm like, oh, remember that red room, brother?
Yeah.
Remember that red room?
Yeah.
So that really, and you know what's really cool is those kids. I'm actually watching their house this weekend. They're now in middle school.
Oh, right on. Cool.
They're out at the beach, and I'm like watching them. So
small world.
Yeah, small world. It's really cool.
Those experiences of losing control in a classroom. I remember, so I used to teach in Hanley High School, which is very different than this area. So like you have a lot of kids. It's like, it's a racially diverse area, but then it's also very economically diverse. And so like, that's the huge factor in how these kids are working together. So like, you know, you have kids that live quarter mile from the school in these $800,000 houses. And then you, like on the north side of town in Winchester, where I grew up, it's like, you know, so I saw a kid at the school try to steal, one of the kids that I was teaching was trying to steal a bike off my porch because he didn't know it was, yours, you know what I mean?
Yeah, his teachers.
And so that was my first year teaching, and I learned how it feels to lose control of a classroom or a kid. Yeah. And like after that, I was like, classroom management. I gotta get this down because I can't do anything else if I can't like work with the kids, you know? So yeah, man, it's interesting. Teaching is a super interesting profession, and I feel like there is a so you and I just did a training today on working with smart boards, and one of the things I'm trying to figure out is how is it that young teachers see education differently from more veteran teachers, and like what is it that each group can give the other? Do you know what I mean? Because like veteran teachers have so much to give, and like you sit down with a veteran teacher, they have a whole playbook of different things to play with. And then like coming into, I mean, this is probably my 5th or 6th year teaching. So I guess I'm getting close to that, like almost mild veteran.
Yeah, no,
you know what I mean? It's
this is my 5th year as
I'm
well.
seasoned,
so,
you know what I mean? But definitely not.
Yeah.
But there's like a worldview thing about things like social media. I think a lot of this stuff, like you were talking about, you were working with our AP on like some equity issues and things like that. I think that there are things that we're seeing that they don't see, that they need help with, and there's also things that they see that we may not be seeing. So I don't know what your thoughts are on those.
Yeah, so ideas. I think young teachers kind of bring in an energy, and I mean, they're closer to the students, you know what I'm saying? So they kind of
we're more like big brothers and sisters almost.
Yeah, like I can draw back to my first year, and I knew it. Like a lot of things that those kids were talking about. I feel like now as the year progressed, I'm starting to lose that a little bit.
Yeah, you feel it slipping.
No,
right?
yeah, and
it's like I'm not on TikTok.
Yeah,
you know
that's what I have to
mean?
call my little brother and ask him.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I think that's part of it. And then I think older teachers, I mean, I think they can bring just their experience. I mean, their wisdom, their years of teaching. Also, I feel like as young teachers, a lot of things, or sometimes at least for me, things were thrown at me, and those veteran teachers were there to be there for me.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I have a really good team of teachers that always have my back. Something gets thrown my way, sometimes I freak out. I try not to show it, but I'm a human, right? I freak out.
Yeah.
So those veteran teachers, some of them that I teach with, they've been teaching for over 20 years. So they've seen the ups and downs of education, the trends, the flows. So they can give me maybe their perspective, a little bit clearer picture.
Yeah, one of the things I've learned from veteran teachers is that education is always in a state of flux, and everyone's trying to find a new box of crayons, you know what I mean, to play with, but that the foundations of what education is are constant. So it's like, are you using this software or that software? Well, I don't know. It's probably not going to matter in 3 years. You know what I mean? So learn it to be proficient, and then just use your tools in the classroom, you know?
And now that you're saying that, I've been thinking about that here lately for myself, like things that I used 3 years ago, are they still applicable today, or should I change it up? Should I go with the new trend? Like, you know what I'm saying? Those are things that I question.
Are there any specifics that you're thinking about?
Just like things like a Pear Deck. I feel like I use Pear Deck an awful lot. You know what I'm saying? Because is there another way to interact with the kids, or like other ways to reach them? Or like, I do a lot of gim kits and games like that. Are there other ways to review the material, and not a game matter, but it's still impactful, where the kids feel like their voice is heard and they're learning?
You know, I had an idea a couple years ago. So I taught 1984, and I had I made a an Instagram account called BMS Big Brother, and like a bunch of the kids started following that. I didn't follow them back on the account, but I was trying to incorporate, and this is before TikTok became a thing. I was trying to incorporate things that they're already utilizing in their social lives, and to show them that they're like responsible, useful ways to do it. And I think that that's something I'll never do again. Not because there were negative outcomes from it, but because I'm so concerned about social media in kids. And maybe I'd love to hear your perspective on it, because maybe you have. I'm 33. How old are you?
27.
So you're like, so you're 6 years behind me, and I'm just curious if like you have a different perspective than I do, because when I look at social media, like at a certain point, you couldn't advertise cigarettes on television. Do you know what I mean? But you could just freely for decades and decades and decades. And then, and there are all the other sorts of pieces of legislation that have come out where it's like, actually, this is manipulative and this is inappropriate and we can't do this. And I think that at least I hope in some way in 10 years, 5 years maybe, there's much clearer expectations of what social media can do when it comes to interacting with kids, because it's so, I don't know, I feel it's become an overall negative for the kids.
No, yeah. And I feel like the kids are just kind of being used for ads and things like that, for products to be pushed on them, and they're not really thinking outside the box ever. Yeah. And that's what they always draw to. So I'm kind of scared myself, but I also see positive, which you probably see positives as well. But what do you think how do you think we can achieve that?
I have no idea, man. I think it has to be government legislation.
Okay.
I think that one of the things that I've noticed recently is how powerful these corporations are, and how they have so much.
Yeah, like that's like my number one thing.
You know, like you and I have had conversations, and I mean, to your point, I've learned more on YouTube than I learned in college. Like, guiding me towards books, authors, listening to lectures, all these different things. And I know that you're big in watching and reading too. So like, I don't want to lose that piece, you know. I definitely don't want to lose it, but I don't think, like, for example, the people that get pulled off of social media, that's not a government-based decision. It's not based within like an agreed upon set of rules that are foundational to the Constitution in our country. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think what people are noticing, Facebook and things like that, are kind of like,
it shows how much power they have.
Yeah, and they're like the public square now, because we don't go down to, I mean, some people do still, but a lot of times to exchange ideas, we're going online. As soon as I get home, people are like, I'm going to log on Facebook maybe, or see what people are interacting
what's going on
with,
YouTube,
you know?
What's on Twitter.
Yeah, what's on Twitter. Yeah. So I feel like those things do need to be regulated, kind of like a public utility, you know, kind of like that idea. Yeah.
I heard a great analogy the other day, because like people just keep talking about it. Like the cancel culture, like, whatever people think, like the people that are super anti it are very vehemently anti it. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I honestly haven't truly formulated my opinion on what it means to, like, for example, take the president off of Twitter. Do you know what I mean? I don't know what I fully think about it, but I do think that so it's like the analogy that I heard was, 30 years ago, the only way that you could own a business, think of all these YouTubers who like have spread a lot of crazy ideas, right? Yeah. Agree with them or disagree with them, or agree or disagree with their right to be able to do it. The AT&T 20 years ago, the only way you could have a business is if you had a phone connection. 30 years ago, 10 years ago, even now. And if AT&T didn't like what you were saying to your customers, they didn't have the right to cut off your phone connection to be able to communicate with your customers. So, what are your thoughts about that? So this is what I wanted to talk to you, like, not this, but like, like finding a conversation like this. Like, what does it mean to take someone off of social media? Like,
I just don't think that I don't agree with that, because I mean, you're essentially, I've heard this term used a lot, the internet death penalty. You're essentially like,
I haven't heard that yet.
Taking them off the internet, and that's most of us. That's how we live our lives these days. Whether people agree with that or not, I mean, it's true. You know what I'm saying? So I just don't think I think that there should be regulations put in place, and and that comes from the government, and then that would essentially hopefully come from us because we elect those people, correct? You know what I'm saying? So then it would be
allegedly.
That's a whole nother, I mean, we could do 8 podcasts about that. Oh, geez. That's actually a big topic I'm going to be talking about in my class this year, about campaign finance and all those things like that.
Oh, really? And what do you want to talk to them about?
Just like follow the money. I was an assignment called Follow the Money. So these politicians, left and right, blue and red, they're going to tell you all these things, but who's giving them the money? You know? And then you need to look at the legislation and how that legislation is, who's benefiting from the legislation.
Cui bono. It's like who,
taxpayer, or is it someone who can donate from super PAC money that's not regulated?
Yeah.
You know? So,
it's bonkers, man. It's bonkers. I've been sort of disheartened lately with like all of this stuff. Like, it's really like kind of been weighing on me a bit. Like, I just watched Rogan's podcast the other day. Did you see the woman who escaped from North Korea on that podcast? She's been on a couple of like big podcasts, and she's been talking about her experience of having left North Korea, and like, it's such a big problem. I have no idea, like, other than just learning about it, like, what is my role? Campaign finance reform, like all these different issues.
See, that's the issue. I'm glad that you said that, because I felt the same way here recently. I would say, I think it's just with everything going on, like coronavirus, and politically, there's a lot going on.
And you watch a school board meeting.
You watch a school board meeting where it's like I'm watching the national. I'm watching the presidential debate, and like, you're watching it all trickle down. It's like all this. So I think
trickle down economics didn't work, but trickle down like politics
works. Yeah. And I think what I was telling one of the administrators, I think me personally, I just need to focus more on the local level. What can I do here locally? Can I start like a mutual aid program where that means where like we bring people together and like we're aiding each other, it's not just everything's profit based, because as a community, we live in a good community. I think that we could bring those people together. So maybe starting something like that, or helping underprivileged kids in the community,
like that ACE program that was talked about.
The ACE program. Yes.
Which is, could you explain what that is? Because I think
so the ACE program is a program where students sign up and they go to community college for 2 years free.
Yeah. Shouldn't that just...
No, that's a side note, but shouldn't that just be a thing? Yeah. And I mean, my brother did that, and he benefited. I know several of our staff, a lot of. So I sent out an email because I'm part of the Dialogue on Race committee, and that's something that we hold, or we put on that event. And I sent out the email, and a lot of staff are sitting back like, "Thank you so much. My son, he's now going to tech." Or he's maybe going to another college, but he's also, because there's a community service piece too. You have to accumulate so many hours.
I like that.
Yeah, so it's like you're giving back to your community, and then your community's helping you thrive. It's all community based.
That sounds so good, man.
And that's what it's about.
So I'm signed up for the Dialogue on Race. I didn't go to it last year.
I'm excited. I'm actually speaking at that.
Are you really?
Yes, I'm actually on the schedule. So.
I was curious about that because they had said that we had local like educators and stuff. Somebody had said that somewhere, maybe the school board meeting that I watched the other day. Yeah. And then I went to their website and I was like, well, who's speaking? Do I know any of these people? And I was curious. So one of the things that I like about what you're talking about with ACE is that we went through a diversity and equity training over the last couple of years, just like all the staff, and like that's a common practice in corporate and public environments now. And at the end of it, I was like, okay, like, what do we do? Yeah. Do you know what I mean? No, and so like a lot of these topics, like you and I have had good conversations. I've had conversations with other colleagues. You know, I've listened to podcasts. I've talked to friends and like all these conversations about what equity is, and like a diverse diet of ideas on that too. Yeah. Like, should we be charging with this, or should we be hesitant with this? And like, I'm trying to formulate where I land with that. But nonetheless, at the end of that training, I was like, well, I think what we've done effectively is maybe a handful of people who've never thought about these things have heard these ideas of like what it's like to be a non-white student or non-white straight student in a classroom. Like, think about it, talk about it, because there's a lot of people who really care and love, and they think that they don't realize that they're doing a handful of different things. Yeah. And I think that it's good to have that education, but then at a point it's like, what's the next step? Like, how do we actually do something here? You know?
That's something that I do like from the dialogue on race. And that's actually, I remember one of my first years of teaching, I went because I was invited, and that was an action plan. We come up with action plans there.
Yeah.
Like, so I like that. They like, after talking with community members in our community, what are you going to do next? What's your next step? My next step was bringing these things to school. So I think now we just got to keep moving the ball forward. And I've actually met with, that's what I'm really excited about. These students are really engaged in this work.
They're dialed into this stuff,
they
man.
Really, that's our focus actually for the Dialogue on Race at this summit. It's about student voice. And I have a group of students I actually met with over the summer. I've been meeting with students, and they've just been kind of telling me their experiences and things like that. And it's very powerful.
Yeah. So what do you bring in to speak? Like, what do you
kind of talk about like equity in Montgomery County, my perspective, why I think it's needed, why I think student voice is important, and kind of things that I've like struggled with and things that I can work on, things like that regarding equity.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting to see this is sort of playing out on a national scale now too, with the idea of like bringing these ideas in and then it being kind of labeled as critical race theory. And like, I honestly don't thoroughly understand what critical race theory is. I've read it, I've heard it, and then I've heard different people have different interpretations of it.
See, that's where I'm stuck there.
It's like, what does this mean? You know what I mean?
I'm stuck there because I'll send you some videos from this one guy that I listen to, Funky Academic. He has a podcast.
Oh, cool.
He's a cool guy.
Shout out Funky Academic. Yeah, come on the podcast, man.
Yeah, I've listened to some of his stuff over the last couple of days because we're going to have like a meeting like as a group of social studies teachers, but I think that's shifted a little bit. And I'm still going to talk to a lot of social studies teachers, but about those things. But I haven't been exposed to it enough. I am going to go buy a book about this. In that podcast, he has some book suggestions about critical race theory and like just kind of introduction and things like that. So I was going to maybe go buy some of the books and just look at it, because as someone coming through a lens of equity, I think that's going to come up over and over again. So
like, how do we define this? Like what's my elevator pitch on this?
Yeah.
So my understanding is that we have 400 years of history in this country, most of which had no consideration of how the idea of white supremacy within the new definition of white supremacy. Like, I think you and I might have talked about this before. 10 years ago, white supremacist was like, you know, KKK, like not neo-Nazis, like all these people that were like adamantly white supremacist. Yeah. But then I think me and other people have come to a new understanding of like, it's actually more of a structural thing that just benefits white people unconsciously or unintentional, or maybe intentionally, but it's still like at this point, like obviously we don't want to intentionally advantage white folk. And so I think that my understanding is that looking at things through a lens of race, through critical race theory, allows us to just see that thing that's been invisible to us for so long so that we can actually address it. Yeah. Does that make sense?
No, yeah, that makes sense to me.
Yeah. And then,
like, for example, one of the examples he was giving, I think he was talking about how like when we were fighting the revolution, he brought up that in England or in Britain, they had freed the slaves before. So to leave that part out, he was saying that
but then they're still like profiting off of it. Do you know what I mean?
No,
it's like,
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But that's what the people in the South were maybe worried about, because that was how they made their living and things like that.
Right.
So that's also part of the story as well. That's never been talked about. Like maybe they wanted to fight against Britain because there was rumblings of abolition and things like that, and that would change their whole way of life, and they would lose their property. At that point, that's how you got voting rights and things like that if you owned property. So that's
part of the story that I've never even really considered.
Yeah.
Like, so you're saying the American Revolution, because England had freed the slaves that they had, even though they had all this like crazy other imperialism everywhere.
I mean, India,
but
things like that, yes.
they got rid of that. It wasn't just like freedom from inappropriate taxation. It was also like, hey, we want to keep these slaves.
It's not just about that's what he kept saying. It's not just about the structure, and that's what I was going to look more into, because I didn't really have enough background knowledge myself in that.
Yeah.
But I wanted to I wanted to share that with you so you can look into it. Also, another thing he was talking about is kind of like with Brown versus Board. I didn't even know this, but this was a thing. He was saying that Soviets. This was during the Cold War when that was passed. The Soviets, they were saying, at least we don't hang, like they had like this thing, like a running joke. Well, at least we don't hang black people, because it was capitalism versus communism. So he was arguing that the Soviets around the third world, they were saying like America's toting like all this democracy and things like that, but they don't even let their black people are third-class citizens, second-class citizens, bottom of the barrel kind of people. So
yet again, the Russians strike again. Trying to divide
America. So he was saying that like leaving that part out, that's a part that's never even, I never knew that was a thing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So like they were giving out leaflets and giving out things to the third world, saying like our way's better, fighting that capitalism versus communism. So he was arguing that played a part in it as well.
Yeah.
That like they wanted to win the overall battle, capitalism versus communism. So.
Oh, that's interesting. What is it? What was it? If something Funk. What was his name?
Funky Academic.
Funky Academic.
Yeah.
I'm going to check this guy out. Yeah, that's interesting. That's a lens that I have.
His last name's Frimpong.
Frimpong?
Yeah, Arami Frimpong, I believe is his
Arami
name.
Frimpong.
Yeah.
All right, shouts out to Arami.
And I apologize if I said that wrong.
yeah. Nah, he'll be good. He'll come on the podcast. Yeah, it's interesting. So for me, like, these are always things that I've been thinking about, and like I did a lot of work in college, like learning Dr. King's message and like writing about that and like having conversations about that. And so one of the things that I've coming out of college, I was very much in the idea of sort of like, Sam Harris. He's another like writer and podcaster.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've heard that.
So his thesis is that basically following along with Dr. King, that at some point skin color has to be as interesting as hair color. Mm-hmm. And we just, that's sort of a thesis, right? Like content of character, not the color of the skin, right? Yeah. Back to King. And then I was having a conversation with my sister, who is also white, but her husband's black. And so it's like she's connected in these communities as well, like having conversations, like her kids, like she's like thinking about her family, right?
Yeah.
So she's deep into it. And she said to me, which was an education for me, which is like, as soon as you get to that point, you're sort of discounting someone else's experience, right? And for me, is like, these are just things I never, like, I didn't have to think that if I don't consider someone's race, that in some way I'm negating some sort of experience that they've had that I haven't had. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
No, yeah, that makes sense.
And so like those are two ideas that I try to, like, I can't really land anywhere with that, because I think the criticism that people are putting out on critical race theory, you listen to people like Shapiro and all these people that are like out in the world and saying that if we look at things through this lens, all it does is exacerbate a problem that is slowly trickling away. Mm-hmm. But then on the other side, so that would almost sort of be more associated with Dr. King's message. Like, don't think of skin. Don't just think about content of character, right? But then a newer understanding that I've come to, but then still wars with this other idea. And I think a lot of people that, is that you can't forget, we have to know this history. Like Tulsa, like I didn't know what happened to Tulsa. You know what I mean?
Like I'll pull every year. I'll ask my kids, "Do you know who Emmett Till is?"
Yeah,
and they have no idea.
They have no idea.
You know how
that's crazy.
It kills me inside, because if you've ever been to the Washington D.C. African American History Museum, I don't know if you've.
I haven't been. So last time I was in D.C., it wasn't open. I think it's only been open for like 3 years, right?
Yeah, and it's kind of hard. I kind of finagle my way in other ways, but it was really cool. I like begged the lady.
You're like, excuse me, I'm speaking on the dialogue on race.
No, I was literally like, I'm a teacher, like, because I was like, Arthur teacher, our former civics teacher, he'd always try to get tickets, and we could never get tickets for it. So like, I was like, look, man, if I come in here, I can share my experience with everyone. She was like, okay, go ahead.
Yeah.
Like, yes, you're amazing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wait, you just showed up to the door?
Yeah. Just showed up to the door. I was at a Virginia Tech, West Virginia game, and we had time to kill. So me and my roommate just walked up to the door and just like, let's try it.
All right, I'm gonna try that.
And we got in.
I'm gonna try that.
It was crazy. Yeah, it worked out. And that, I mean, it's a life change. I got chill bumps thinking about it. But that Emmett Till room, man, is just.
They have a room on Emmett Till?
Yeah, it's just like and it's like him, or it's like a casket. It's kind of like a wake kind of feeling, and like people are in there bawling, man. It's just, it's crazy.
That's intense.
Yeah, it is intense.
And
then like what I try to tell my kids is like, his mom had an open casket. So then this wouldn't repeat itself, and then we see what's happening. Like last year when I told kids that, they could see it because what's been happening in the like what's been happening across the country. They could really feel that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I feel like that's what it takes.
Yeah.
For really people, for hearts to change and minds to change, it's really gonna like people have to be impacted.
Yeah. Yeah. Could you imagine making that decision as a mom?
No, I mean,
like that's having the sense of history and the sense of like the future and making that decision. It's like that had to have been really hard for her.
Have you heard of the book Color of Law?
Yeah, you told me about that. Yeah.
So I haven't. My roommate read it over the summer. He just finished it, so we're gonna book swap. But he said it's really good, and I actually watched a John Oliver piece, and he referenced the book a lot. But it talks about the GI Bill, and it talks about
redlining predominantly, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And actually, Roanoke. I have to show you this map. I don't know if you ever showed you this map, but Roanoke was redlined back in the day. And if you look today, because one of our colleagues who's from Roanoke, we were sitting down looking at it, and she was like, "It's the exact same way." And I was like, yeah, because that's the way it was developed.
When it comes to race or when it comes to economics?
Like race and the way things are built up. You know what I'm saying? Like things that are built up in one area, in another area, you're only going to find certain kinds of things. You know
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. It's like how that, and that's what these like, that's where these like diversity inclusion trainings go right, which is you don't, like as the average person, you're not aware, regardless of your upbringing or how what you look like. Like you probably don't know about redlining. I mean, I think most people know about it now.
Yeah.
But that's how those things like sort of echo into the future. And the Emmett Till piece, like that is just, it's so relevant. It's relevant to the decision to do that. I mean, so some of those things are like.
And being as a mixed student, like when I went to college, I took African American history. That class like lit a fire.
Yeah.
Like ever since there.
Yeah.
Like I don't know how to explain it. Like it's just ever since it. Like we read about Tulsa. I never even heard about that until then.
Yeah.
I read Tulsa's Burning. I read a book by John Lewis. I learned about his life, about his struggle. All these different things. We talked about the Scottsboro trials. We talked about all these different things that I never even looked at when I was in school.
Yeah.
Or maybe we looked at it, but like we didn't talk about it enough where it stuck with me.
Yeah.
It never impacted me.
Yeah.
So I just felt.
And it was like just in February.
Yeah. Yeah. Or yeah. Or
you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Or like that. Like I always say this when I go to trainings and things like that. When I'm talking about equity, like I love Martin Luther King, but there's more black people than Martin Luther King.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's my goal. Being a mixed teacher here is just expose kids to different ideas. And different voices, not just the same
and then all
cookie cutter voice where we talk about being peaceful all the time. Because to really get things, I don't know if you saw the civil rights movement, like people in general, like you have to force your way to get things.
Yeah.
You might have to boycott, you might have to struggle,
There's so many interesting people through that era too, right? Over the summer I read James Baldwin, The Fire Next Time. And you read that book and it's like, it's I mean there's fire, there's so much fire in that. It's such an intense book, and it's not King's Message. Do you know what I mean? And
but that's what I like looking at the different messages. I'm really big into Malcolm. I really like Malcolm. And
you set me hip to that show on Amazon, like One Wild Night or One Night. You know what I'm talking about? Where is Ali?
One Night in Miami.
One Night in Miami. Yeah. And that introduced me to Malcolm in a different way. And like on my Kindle, I have his biography, and it's just such a massive book. Like
Yeah,
you know what I mean? It's like hard to chew through, but yeah. So I think one of the things that I'm trying to solve, coming from my perspective and who I am and like the learning that I've done, is that I see so many people, like it just keeps coming back to these like like going to the dialogue on race, and like who's doing that? It's already a self-selected group for the most part. It's already people that are interested in like trying to sweat your way through this.
Yeah.
And then when you go into, like, for example, when Trump was still in office, he said that no federal agency can do inclusion and diversity training because it was antithetical to whatever, right? And then, so what I'm trying to figure out is the people that are thinking about this are actually thinking about it. And those that aren't don't think that they're doing anything wrong. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So like there are a lot of good people out in the world doing things unconsciously or not attempting to bring light to histories. And what I'm trying to do is figure out how to communicate effectively to those people, the people who don't know or don't, they think everything's just groovy, you know?
I think it comes back to patience and just like we're all at different parts in this journey, you know. So I feel like it comes back to that. But I feel like a lot of times in the messaging, like I'm not talking about you, but just like in general, a lot of the messaging turns a lot of people off.
Yeah,
you know
like the word white
like,
supremacist.
Like that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, white supremacy.
Like if we really want to build a working class, like I feel like you could build a coalition of working class people that are getting screwed over.
That other movie you told me about. What was that one called with
Judas and the
Messiah?
Yeah, it's about Fred Hampton.
Yeah,
Shout out to Fred Hampton.
Shouts out Fred Hampton. Yeah,
they have a podcast and they're amazing. You should check them out.
Fred
Hampton
cool. Leftist. Fred Hampton leftist.
They're amazing.
Yeah, and then I learned more about Fred Hampton, and I was like, oh yeah, no wonder they killed him.
No, yeah, I know.
Yeah. But there's so many parallels between just working class people.
Or have you ever heard? I think the guys. You might want to double check me on this, but I think his name's Daryl Davis or something like that. He did a TED talk and things like that, but he friends a Klan member, a Grand Wizard of the KKK. He goes to this dude's meetings for 6 years. It takes 6 years. Like I'm saying, we're on different paths. It takes patience. Like people aren't just gonna flip like that, you know. But it took 6 years, and the dude was a sheriff and he was a Grand Wizard of the KKK. The dude retired from both, or like stepped down from the KKK, and then gave that black man his stuff, and they were best of friends.
Yeah,
because the guy just kept coming and showing that he's just a human, just like over and over, just showing that love wins in the end.
Yeah, it's like that Ed Norton movie, American History X, right? It's like you just have to be. I think that that's the biggest problem is that there's so many people, like whether it's this conversation on race or whether it's the conversation. So like in Virginia, they just mandated. I don't even understand the bill necessarily, but they're attempting to create more visibility and access for trans and LGBTQ kids. Yeah. And just seeing our school board meeting the other night, it's like people are very confused about these things. And I think a big part of it is because people they're siloed into being around people that are just like them, you know? And
then, social media doesn't help. Like
the algorithms are feeding us further into that silo.
You would hope that it could be used in a better manner where you have to be exposed to those things. You know what I'm saying? But now, like you're saying, the algorithms kind of put us in a manner where we see what we want to see. You know what I'm saying? Or we're seeing what they want us to see, you know?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like...
But then on the other side of the conversation, F. Scott Fitzgerald once said that the measure of a high caliber mind is the ability to hold two opposing ideas in your head at the same time. And so I try to do that often, right? I try to listen to examples like the podcast that you're mentioning, and then also listen to people that are on the opposite end of that spectrum to try and figure those things out. Like Kyle Kalinske, like I listen to his stuff, but then also I'll put on Shapiro or
Sager and Jetty is?
Yeah, I love him.
Okay,
I love him.
I love Crystal. You know the guy who
Crystal and
Breaking
Sager.
Points.
Yeah,
I love that show because it's kind of like that. You know?
Yeah.
One's more populist right, one's more populist left, and they're kind of...
I think Sager's more like he's sort of a Trojan horse. Like he represents himself as more conservative than I think he actually is.
No, yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I think he's sort of a Trojan horse where it's like I think it. I don't know. I think that so many people are walking around in their lives and they're not actually spending time. And it goes back to the redlining conversation, like the color of law. Was that the name of the book?
Color of Law.
it's like and the conversation about white supremacy, it's like, we've been intentionally segregated from people of different races and economic classes. Biggest, like, really, like, economic classes in a huge way. Like, you don't see people that make a lot less money than you or a lot more money than you. You're sort of like, you're waffling around.
Contrast it with the trailer parks. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's just kind of how.
Yeah, and you're around the people that you're around, and it's so easy to get caught into not actually seeing other people.
But I think that's now you're saying this, that's the beauty of public school.
Yes, man.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And that wraps it all back up, because we have a chance to then allow these people to see other people as just people.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
This is our chance.
That.
That's why it's got to start here.
I talk with people about seeing people with disabilities. Mm-hmm. Most people in their adult life could live their entire adulthood and not be around somebody with a disability. My microphone's all messed up. There it is. I don't have the mic stand, so if you're listening to this audio and it keeps like flobbering in and out, like, I am holding my microphone like a dope. But most people go through most of their adult life and not be around a person with a disability. Whereas as a teacher, like, we work with kids with disabilities all the time, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm a big advocate for students being in a classroom and seeing that this kid, like, isn't able to hold his body still, or this kid shouts out randomly, or this kid doesn't understand and needs, like, I think that is important for the kids to see that.
Yeah, it adds to their file folder. Like, I was taught, like, our brains are kind of just like big filing cabinets, right? Mm-hmm. So, like, things that we see, things that we're exposed to, we just file them away. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, you just got to add more to their file folder.
And then you got to have a compassionate teacher that can work in those spaces and like, integrate a room in together, like, people from different socioeconomic classes, different races, different, like, identities, different, like, ability levels.
And then a teacher needs to make sure that you're building those relationships, and then you can identify those things easily and quickly. If you have a good relationship with students, and then if you have a good relationship, they're less likely to be like, I don't want to work with Jimmy. They're less likely to do that because they trust you that you're putting them in a good position.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I think that people, and that, going back to the conversation about social media, I just feel we're further being funneled into being exposed to people that are more like us, because that's what the algorithms want. But then on the other side of it, like, should we, like, who gets to make the decision of what gets filtered into my, like, if we take it out of the algorithm's hands, are they, who makes the decision of what needs to be seen? Do you know what I mean? No, and so it's like, then you lose.
I think that's the tricky part right now with, like, you were talking about, like, censoring the president. Why do
I don't envy the tech companies in that regard.
Why the tech companies, they're like the big brother or like overlord in that. Mm-hmm. And I understand they're private entities right now.
Yeah.
Like we were saying, they've kind of changed to public squares.
Yeah, it's very much a public square.
It's a very tricky situation.
Yeah, I don't know how to fix it.
Yeah.
How do we fix it, man? How do we take these ideas and make them work? Like, what do we do? You know what I mean? Yeah. That's the question I keep coming to.
And then, like, I don't know, man. It's just very, because, like, you give, like, just looking at the political system, you get a lot of, I don't know, I was very fired up from 2016 from Bernie's campaign, and then it's just, over time here, it doesn't really seem that, like, the same fight's there from everybody, like in my friend group, and it's everywhere. So it's just kind of frustrating.
See things kind of fizzle.
Yeah. Like, people are going back to sleep. It's like, wake up, bro.
Yeah.
It's the same. Like, what is different?
It's the same cats, man.
Yeah.
Same cats running the thing.
Yeah. It's like, what is going on?
Same cats, different hat. That's gonna be the name of this podcast. Same cats, different hat. Yeah. These things. It's I don't know. I think that discussion and exposure.
No, that's what I was gonna say.
I think that's the biggest piece, and then eventually people will start to come up with actionable steps, right? Like,
I mean, because over time, we're eventually going to be at an age where we're going to be like the leaders. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, we're still like kind of, we're getting there.
We lead 13-year-olds.
Yeah,
But
yes,
you know what
I'm saying? Like leading other adults. I mean, you know what I'm saying? So,
100%. Yeah.
Like, our mindset, like our generations.
We'll transition
We'll transition a little bit, I think.
Well, if we don't have, I don't talk about politics too much, but if we don't have a president who's in his 80s, his or her 80s, you know what I mean?
That's another thing. I'm going to pose that to my kids this year, I think. That's a good question. Like, should there be term limits?
And you don't want
like an age, not a term limit, so there is term limit, but like, should there be an age limit because
it's a tough conversation because you don't want to be ageist. You don't want to be like you're too old, but also like the world is moving so quickly.
Yeah, like things change. I mean,
but
we
also
see it in our
like,
classroom.
But also,
we have a new technology that's changed like completely. None of us know how to use it.
No, I'm good with tech, and I have no idea how to use it. You know what I mean?
It's like it's crazy.
But then, like, it can't be an age thing because you have cats like Bernie who seem to understand it until I don't know.
Yeah. And like a Cornell West. Cornell West, I love.
Oh yeah, Cornell West. Yeah, like it's not. It's definitely not age.
Yeah.
It's just people. You know, I found myself in a position where I've lost a lot of faith in our leadership, and I feel as if the leadership that we are, the people that we're putting into positions of power, like for example, you know, so many people were just like not into Trump that it was just like, well, we'll take whoever will win. You know what I mean? And then,
but in reality,
it's like, yeah, it's like,
we still have ICE,
what's different?
Still deporting people,
yeah, there's still
people in cages.
Same stuff. Started bombing new countries, like all these different things.
Yeah.
And I don't know, people just don't seem to see. I think that's why people wanted Trump. I think that's where it came from.
But that I agree with you completely. And his
hello. Could we have just like 5 more minutes and we wrap this up? Our custodian, who's really sweet, just came in. But yeah. I don't know, where were we? I got distracted.
Okay. I know what you're gonna say. You were talking about Trump, I believe.
Yeah. So many people wanted
it.
It
is going to be able to exist until people are willing to change structural problems, because that dude can exist because the people on the other side, they're doing the very similar things. You know what I'm saying? So they can't really go at him. So he's going to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And his messaging works.
It works.
He's like the WWE president. I'm really big into WWE.
Oh yeah.
So he's like, it's like he's a WWE president. Man.
Yeah, he knows how to win people over.
He's a heel. He's perfect heel.
So much of the country is still flying flags. I mean, I drove about 15,000 miles this summer.
Yeah,
all over the country, and he still has a lot of strength in those all over the country.
I mean, have you looked at any of the polling, like from like any of the things that they've done?
Yeah.
Go
ahead. Yeah, we're just talking. Yeah. Oh, no worries. You're fine. Yeah.
Yeah, so I just think like the poll, even like Trump Jr. I mean, and some polling I've seen, he was second.
Yeah.
You know? So it's just like.
You think he'll run again?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting.
I think
DeSantis has a good chance.
I think it's interesting that I feel like there's the country. Yeah, we are recording. Yeah. No worries. It's fine.
You're fine.
No, I appreciate it. So it's at this point in the podcast where our really sweet custodian walks in the middle of us doing the podcast, and we ended up chatting with her for a few minutes. So here's a hard cut to explain why it is that the conversation sort of derailed and had to get back on track. That's all. Back to the podcast. Yeah. I don't know where we go with this, bub. I don't know. I think that what I like to see is, these committees, these meetings, these things turning into something like, well, let's give education to people. You know what I mean? And I think that is something that is needed, and communities of color and people in poverty are disproportionately benefiting from a program like that. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I love the idea of having these conversations and having it leading to something that actually works.
No, yeah.
So. Let's do another round another time.
No, yeah, definitely.
What do you think?
I really like this.
Yeah. What do you want to add? How do you feel?
What do you mean, like?
What do you got? I mean, let's wrap it up. Anything?
Nothing.
Any last thoughts?
Shout out the U.S. Olympic team, man. They've been wrestling really hard.
Really?
I'm a big wrestling fan. You guys know I coach wrestling.
Ryan coach. Yeah.
So it's a big wrestling thing. We actually had first ever African American female win gold.
Oh, right on.
It's a stock.
Oh, cool.
So it was an amazing match. Helen, she's wrestling for bronze. She was Olympic. I think her last name is Marules. She got gold the last Olympics, but she bumped up a weight class, and she actually just had like a serious concussion, and they didn't think she was going to be eligible to wrestle. But she
in a match?
Yeah, she came back and she wrestled. I think she's wrestling for bronze. David Taylor. Actually, this morning before I came to work, I didn't even eat coffee today, man. That was my coffee. He was wrestling Iranian. Iranian, they've wrestled twice before in the World Championships. They're very tough. Yazdani's very tough. He's an Iranian. We were losing, like 10 seconds left. Our singlets all ripped. It's a very hand-fight match, you know. We take him down with 10 seconds. Like, whoa! I just stood up and Tiger Woods it.
Yeah, man. You're deep in this stuff. I haven't watched any of the Olympics. I wanted to see the climbing.
Yeah.
Did you see any of the climbers?
I saw a little bit, but I wasn't I was tuned into it. It was on while I was playing 2K or something.
Yeah, well, just like with wrestling, you don't know the intricacies of wrestling. I could watch it and be like, oh, he really mollywopped him, you know what I mean?
It's my roommates, they just sit there was that good?
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah.
What are the point? What's the scoring here?
Yeah.
Yeah. But the climbing, have you seen the speed climbing?
No, never seen.
Oh, dude, just YouTube speed climb. After this, I'll show you speed climbing. It is bonkers. They go up these walls in 5 seconds. It's insane. It's crazy. Shouts out to the Olympic team.
No, yeah.
You like the Olympics?
I don't no.
Yeah.
Wrestling Olympics.
You like wrestling.
Because that's kind of what
you like wrestling, and you're partial to the Olympics because it has wrestling in it. Yeah.
Yes, I don't like the way the Olympics kind of comes in. And
how do these people not get paid?
That and
it's insane.
All those big we're seeing the NCAA crumble right now. I mean, it's kind of all those things are.
Is that right?
I mean, not crumble, but they're losing their power because the kids can now get paid off their likeness. I'm not sure if you saw that.
I did see that.
Favor.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's gonna help kids out a lot. And I mean, these football, they could honestly break away if they wanted to and form their own league, and they wouldn't even need the NCAA.
That's interesting.
Because they're already forming super conferences. I don't know if you've seen that, but Texas and Oklahoma, they're leaving the Big 12, and they're going to the SEC with Alabama, the best football conference. Yeah. Because that's kind of what drives. That's the biggest. They make a lot of money. So it's kind of driving it. And then the Big 12 is just going to dismantle. So teams like West Virginia's in the Big 12. So West Virginia's going to be
Yeah.
So there's a lot of speculation. The Big 12 could get teams lower level teams like a Cincinnati to come in, or the Big 12 could just dissolve. West Virginia could join us, things like that.
Any of my friends that know me from the past that are listening to the podcast right now are realizing Aaron's just being polite, listening to these things that he doesn't understand or know.
And I love sports. If you can't tell us it before,
no, you're in it, man. Life, you're in it, dude. I think that you could slightly make an argument for college athletes not getting paid. You could get close to a stronger argument for that. Yeah. I think they still should get paid, or at least be able to profit off their likeness. But the Olympic athletes, I cannot make sense at all of how they're not getting any sort of payment.
Yeah.
And people say that, they can get an endorsement. Well, it's if you're the fifth best swimmer in the world,
or get an endorsement. Other than that,
if you're the biggest and the best, you can get an endorsement.
Yeah, is our men's Greco 63 kilograms?
Ever and an endorsement? And is that individual working or less devoted? Are they not working as hard? You know what I mean? It's the same capacity of effort and work, just with different outcomes. So I don't know. Maybe they just melt down their medals and pawn them off. How many Olympic athletes have probably sold their medals? Do you know what I mean? Because they get out of there.
I just like to touch one. Those things look pretty cool, especially the ones this year. They look pretty sad.
I didn't see them.
I watched some.
I have one right here. No. Let's wrap this, man. Right. Do you have any online contacts you want people to have, or just kind of check out the podcast and you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, and anybody that's in the area, people probably in this area listen.
We're in the southwestern Virginia area.
So we're having a dialogue on race.
Oh, yeah.
And that's August 28th, and that's at the Christiansburg Moose Lodge. So
and that's 4 to
5:30.
4 to 5:30.
And you'll have speakers. I'm planning to speak speakers. Equity leads from across the county are actually the person who's in charge of equity, Guyleen Woodsetzer.
All right.
It's good stuff.
Yeah.
And it's going to have all kinds of, usually we'd have food. We have a big celebration. With COVID, we can't really do that. So kind of bring your own snack if you want a snack and things like that.
I'm bringing a sign. It's going to say, "Go Coach Wade." I'm just going to wave a sign. I'll be either in the front row or in the way back and just waving a sign that says, "Go Coach." Well, look, man, I'm glad you did this, and we'll do another. I think we got more stuff to dig into. It was a long day for me today, so my brain was running maybe 78%. So we'll dial it in. Maybe we'll do a morning one where a bit fresher for me. All right, brother.
Open.
All right, man.
All right, thanks.
There it is. My voice squeaked. I'm leaving it in the outro. My voice squeaked. It happens. It's a normal part of being a human. So there it is, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. Follow along, subscribe, like, all that stuff. And Ryan and I are going to try and do a round 2 sometime middle of the year so we can kind of see how the year is going. I'm recording this outro the Friday of the first week of school, and it's been a great week so far. I'm really excited for this school year, and I'm really excited to get other teachers on the podcast. I got a buddy of mine, Clint, who's lined up, and much more in the future. So follow along, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.